Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to USC's Inside the Trojans Huddle. Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion with USC columnists and staff writers. We begin with the pregame show where we introduce our panel members of this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle and give you the latest USC football news. First, let's meet this week's panelists. Eric McKinney, publisher and editor-in-chief of WeAreSC.com. Chris Arledge, former William Jewell College DB and team captain, and USC columnist who writes the popular column Musings with Arledge. And Bruce Bagney, chairman and CEO of WeAreSC.com. And that's me, your host, Greg Katz, moderator of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and a weekly columnist who writes The Obvious and Not So Obvious and IMHO Sunday. Before we kick off, here is the latest USC football news. On Monday, Trojans outstanding freshman safety Callan Bullock was named to the Football Writers Association All-America team. On3 is reporting that both USC quarterback Jaxson Dart and tight end Michael Trigg, USC roommates who placed their names in the transfer portal, are expected to choose between Oklahoma or Mississippi as their next playing destination. Dynamic Oklahoma wide receiver Mario Williams announced on his social media site he's transferring to USC. Williams is 5'9", 186 from Plant City, Florida. And on Friday, it was announced that former Kansas State defensive lineman Tyrone Taleni is transferring to USC through the portal. Taleni is a 6'2", 275-pounder who played his prep ball in America Samoa, attended Mount San Antonio College, and then transferred to Kansas State. Taleni reportedly has 2 years of eligibility remaining. And as a side note, on Monday, former USC and Georgia quarterback J.T. Dan is yet expected again to enter the NCAA transfer portal. All right, panel, we begin the first quarter kickoff with this question. On January 28th, that's the cutoff date for USC's portal transfers to take a full load of spring semester classes to be eligible for practice. How concerned are you that Oklahoma quarterback Caleb Williams has still yet to make his USC transfer decision known? And how important is the lack of a decision affecting those Trojans that are participating in winter workouts? Eric, welcome back from your long trip to Scotland. So maybe we'll get a Scottish point of view on this. So what's your call on these two questions?
No, just a USC view. Not concerned. Mario Williams was Caleb Williams' teammate at Oklahoma. He did announce his commitment to Oklahoma. He was pretty upfront early on in saying, I don't know what he's going to do, but I know I want him to be my quarterback. I do not think that Mario Williams and Lincoln Riley, who, by the way, has already recruited Caleb Williams, already knows what it feels like to get a commitment from Caleb Williams, already has worked a lot with Caleb Williams. I just can't believe that Lincoln Riley and Mario Williams are going to be, I don't want to use the term dupe, but that kind of idea when they both should, I think, have an understanding of what Caleb Williams' ultimate decision is going to be. How that is affecting USC players right now, I got to tell you this, if a USC player right now was spending 1 second thinking about what somebody else is doing or what's going on outside of winter conditioning workouts and trying to solidify a spot on this roster, they're wrong. And they're not going to end up on the roster. So I just don't see this kind of outside, if you want to call it drama, having any effect on this USC team right now. These guys know what last year was. They know what hiring Lincoln Riley means, and they know what they have to do right now over the next few weeks as they kind of set themselves up for that first spring ball under Lincoln Riley.
Chris, how do you see it?
No, I think I agree with Eric, but it would be nice to get a commitment from Caleb Williams soon, in large part because I think it could affect transfer portal guys. And USC needs to have some success in the transfer portal, especially in the defensive front seven. If Williams transfers, USC is going to score a lot of points next year. I'm not worried about that. I'm really worried about the defense, and I'm especially worried about the front seven, and I'm especially worried about the linebackers. I think having Caleb Williams in the fold publicly might impact some transfer portal guys, and that's going to be important if USC wants to win 10 or 11 games next year instead of 8 games next year.
Well, affectionately refer to Bruce Bagney as the. So, Godfather, how do you see from a old view what you're seeing as far as Caleb and how it affects his teammates?
Well, first of all, let me say I really agree very wholeheartedly with what Eric and Chris said. I will say it's maddening as hell, but it's exciting. And this is the first time, guys, we've been excited about SC football for a long time. I mean, first was Lincoln Riley, and now this kid. And I'm not worried about it. Look, if for some reason he didn't come, that would be such a horrible shame to have lost Jaxson Dart. Maybe he'd come back. I don't know if he hadn't already signed. But Miller Moss is supposed to be a hell of a quarterback. And we've got this other kid from, where's he from? Down in Los Alamitos, coming in next year. And I'm just not too worried about it. I just think it's an exciting time. And I think we'll hear from this kid today. I think, frankly, one thing that we may have overlooked is that, there's a lot of administrative stuff that you've got to work through. I mean, I guess we're still a university, right? And these kids are still going to college, right? So I assume their transcript come in. It has to get his housing and all that. And of course, he had to make sure he had his quarterback coach in place. So these are logistical things that have to be taken care of. But I'm not the least bit worried about it.
And he had to open up a bank account in LA.
Yeah, there you go. That's gonna be very important, Chris.
Well, I'm gonna have a different viewpoint than the three of you. I'm getting a little tired of it. Look, if you know where you're going, just say, I'm committed. Show up when you need to show up. As far as administrative work, that's not difficult at all. They have this stuff filled out. He just had to sign his name, basically. All this idea of, relocating and finding a place to live and all that stuff. They're going to give this guy the red carpet service. And as far as the teammates go, I do think it does affect some teammates, not all, but some, because if this guy's supposed to be the leader of the team next year, just in theory, you start to say, look at, man, are you coming? What's the holdup? Now they may know. It's possible the team knows what's going on. It's possible. I'm sure Mario Williams, the irony, of course, is that Mario Williams, you expect he was going to follow Caleb Williams' announcement, but it was like the cart before the horse. But I think that this has gone on a little too far for me. And the fact of the matter is, if he comes, hey, I'm happy for it. I'm excited about it. But, it gives such an individual look at it. Now, I don't think he's breaking any rules. Okay. He's got a deadline and he hasn't done anything wrong. I didn't expect that he would. But look, at some point, you're either going to be with us or you're not going to be with us. And let's just cool the theatrics. That's just my opinion of it. Maybe that's kind of an old school opinion. So
curmudgeonly, I think, is what it is, Greg.
Well, it might be. I mean, I'm not going to argue with it. I can just tell you that, why can't you not just come out and say, I'm transferring to USC, and then we're going to eventually hear the story. I'm sure Eric will be right on top of it, discussing how the whole thing, or Scott Schrader of our RSC recruiting department will be right on top of it. But to me, just make the announcement you're coming at this point. It'll drum up. It's a win-win for everybody. I'm email immediately saying, make sure you renew season tickets right away because he's coming, it's all good, but I don't understand what the holdup is. I just don't get it. So that's just me. And with that positive viewpoint, let's on to the second quarter. Now, based on three reports that USC quarterback Jaxson Dart and tight end Michael Trigg, by the way, they're roommates during the season. They're both in the transfer portal. how will how will it be choosing between Oklahoma or Mississippi? How do you see this drama all playing out? Chris, look into your crystal ball. What's going to happen?
I don't know, but if we were going to make trades with OU like this, we get our quarterback, they get, we get their quarterback, they get ours, we get their coach. I think it's only fitting that they would have gotten ours. I mean, I really do wish we could have worked out a trade where we sent Clay to OU. I think he would have fit in really well there as the son of an O-line coach. He takes
What is a water boy?
I want him there. Okay. I want him there. If not there, then Notre Dame. Look, I'm sorry to lose Jaxson Dart because I think he's a really talented kid. Michael Trigg, I think, also has a lot of ability, but we haven't used the tight end since Dominique Byrd, so I don't know what to make of that. To be honest, in the last few years, I couldn't figure out when any tight end would commit to USC. We hadn't used one so long. As between OU and Ole Miss, whatever. I guess I want them to go to Ole Miss and play well. That way they can beat up on some SEC teams from time to time. But I couldn't really care less. I am sorry to see Jaxson go, and I hope he does well wherever he goes. He's a talented kid.
Bruce Bagney, your thoughts?
Just one thought on the tight end. And you guys who are close to the team and watch practice would know this, but what I saw of Lake McCree last year, I was very impressed with him. I think he's got a lot of potential. I don't know how he blocks, but he sure as hell is a good receiver. As far as I will miss Jaxson Dart. He sort of captured a lot of our hearts. Was it the Washington State game when he came in, had that great game, and then of course he got hurt. In a sense, I don't think he's been treated very well because again, this goes back to the timing and the way the whole thing's been handled with Caleb. It's not Caleb's fault necessarily, but that I think it's been kind of a painful thing for Jaxson. Look, a choice between Oklahoma or Mississippi. I mean, my God, I can't stand either one of them. Now Mississippi, you know that our old boy Kiffin is really enjoying this. He's going to get the SC quarterback, right, to come his way. And he's such a demented soul. He's probably really enjoying that. But, I hope they both do well. I hope both the kids do well. I think that Jaxson Dart especially is a really good kid. And I don't know. I don't know what the impact on the team is, because my sense was, and Eric and Mark are down with the team all the time. I think my sense was that Jaxson Dart really was commanding a lot of respect from the team. And he was viewed as a really strong player and a great leader, I think. And so I don't know what that impact, what the ultimate fallout is with the rest of the players.
Eric, you want to answer that? What do you think? First of all, where do you think they're going to end up? Following up on what Bruce said, is there an impact on the team?
Yeah, as far as where they end up, I don't know. Oklahoma, Ole Miss. I would guess Ole Miss, because I think at this point you can't really fault what Lane Kiffin has done in terms of developing quarterbacks. Now, the interesting thing is Jeff Levy gets a lot of credit for what he did with Matt Corral and that Ole Miss offense, and now he's at Oklahoma, where you'd be playing for maybe the guy who helped make Matt Corral and has done some of that stuff at Ole Miss and certainly stops before that. But I do like that pairing with Lane and Jaxson Dart. I think they'd be really fun to watch, just kind of for college football fans. As far as kind of the impact on the USC team, I just can't fault Lincoln Riley for any decision that turns the page from 2021 and the previous staff and everything that was going on. I don't think he necessarily has to keep anything going in the same direction that it was. If you want to change all the team leaders and all the everything, and here's a new, absolutely clean slate, fresh start, new direction that we're going, then this is the kind of stuff that's going to happen. If Caleb Williams is his guy, and they've already connected, and Caleb Williams is going to come in way more advanced than Jaxson Dart in terms of understanding Lincoln Riley's offense and being able to institute all of that and get things going, then absolutely, I think that's the direction that Lincoln Riley has to go. We're talking about continuity and that kind of stuff. Lincoln Riley threw that out the window when he talked about we're gonna switch 35 roster spots in one off season. I mean, that's potentially every single starter on both sides of the ball. I mean, I don't think it ends up being that way, but that's kind of what he's talking about, potentially doing. So again, if guys are saying, oh, this is different than last year, I think ultimately that's the end goal. That's kind of what they want. So I don't see, again, like Chris said, I'm going to root all the way through college for Jaxson Dart into the pros. And I think he's got a bright future. He would have absolutely been a thrill to cover at USC if he was there for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it was going to be. Talking about kind of the health of the program. If you're going to bring in Lincoln Riley, you have to let him do it his way. And again, if he's going to bring in guys that he's comfortable with, which he clearly showed with the coaching staff, that's what he wants to do, you got to let him do that.
So the question is where do I think that Jaxson Dart and Michael Trigg are going to end up? I will put money down that they will end up at Mississippi. I can appreciate an assistant coach going to Oklahoma, but the main focus is Lane Kiffin, and Kiffin's going to direct that offense. He's going to direct the quarterbacks. I think at this point, Jaxson Dart is probably wised up to the business of college football, and he's going to be looking to his future on who can get me to the NFL and give me playing time. And, look at, he'll be in the SEC, which will give him, adequate chance to go against frontline defenses of the upper echelon. So I think Trigg is interesting because Trigg's half brother is Michael Williams at Georgia. There hasn't seemed to be any talk about him going to Georgia, and apparently he's very tied in. And I thought one of the points that one of you made was, about Jaxson Dart and his effect on the present USC group of guys. I think the group of guys that are remaining know about Jaxson Dart and their affection for him, their trust in him, their likability of him. They really don't know yet about Caleb Williams. And that's kind of lingers on the back of my mind. Not that Caleb isn't going to walk in and be a great leader, but, the players are going to think, the ones that have the real critical thinking skills, in my opinion. And, maybe it'll just not just go by the wayside. I don't know. But in the end, I do think that both of those guys, Trigg and Jaxson Dart, will be at Mississippi, and I'll wish them the best of luck. So with that, we're moving on. All right, it's halftime. Well, just to lighten up the mood a little bit from transfers and Caleb Williams, there are a number of Trojan marching band songs like Fanfare, Fight On, Conquest, Tusk, that are performed by the Trojan marching band during and or after a football game. Just as kind of a curiosity standpoint, what is your favorite Trojans marching band song? We'll start off with Bruce Bagney. What song gets you fired up?
Well, first of all, I've got Chris has got me pretty far off the old school ledge, but I still have to go. My first choice would be Fight On, and I mean that's what I've always. Whenever I think of that song, I think of SC, and but also I have to say I love Tusk, and I love the origins of it with Stevie Nicks and that crowd. Stevie Nicks is one of my all-time favorites. And I remember they did that routine with the band over, it was at Dodger Stadium, I think they did it. So that's right up there with me too, with Fight On.
All right, so Eric McKinney, our publisher at wearesc.com, is there a song that when you go to the Coliseum and you're sitting up there and they start marching on the field, is there one song that you say, now that gets me fired up, that gets my juices flowing?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's Conquest, and it's not close. And I don't have to explain that to you.
All right,
That's
man.
that's
Okay.
that's the easy answer for me. Yeah.
I do like that UCLA sucks refrain, by the way, on Dusk. That's pretty good.
I will tell you a story about that one in a second, but Chris, what's your favorite?
I'm with McKinney on this. Pre-game Conquest when Traveler comes in is about as good as it gets.
That's it.
That's it. That's all I got to say. He already covered it.
And that tells you about Conquest, of course, is from a movie of many decades ago. I don't know if you heard the original movie. I'm trying to remember what the name of the movie was, but USC actually changed a little bit of the song, and they actually, I thought, made a better version of it. I have to agree with my colleagues here, two of them, that it doesn't get any better than Conquest. I have to tell you, I have about 4 different CDs of the Trojan Marching Band. And in fact, I was doing my dishes this afternoon and I just had to put on Conquest. And there's something about Conquest, as much as I know that people identify with Fight On, there is just something about the beginning of Conquest and the end of it. And I'll tell you, as great as that song is, as great as it is greater when SC is in the top 10. Or number 1. It's almost, I don't even want to say it's arrogant, but I will say it is dominating. And it just fires me up to hear it. I could hear it every afternoon and be totally happy with it. Now, I do want to comment on Tusk. My ex-wife, when one of my children went to UCLA, throw apples at me, but he went to UCLA, and after he went to UCLA, my ex-wife, we'd go to the games because, especially at the USC UCLA game, that was like a house divided. My ex-wife would turn to me when the SC would play Tusk, and the SC fans would go, "UCLA sucks." She turned to me with eyes like Roger Rabbit bulging and go, "I just hate that song. I hate it. It's so demeaning." I go, "Honey, it's just a freaking song." She goes, "But to say it's so disgraceful." I said, "Well, maybe that's why they do it, because it does fire up people like you." So whenever I hear Tusk, I have a story
UCLA could
behind that
stop
one.
sucking. UCLA could stop sucking, and then we'd probably have to stop doing the song.
Well, there you go, Chris. There you go.
How's that?
That's folks, I got to tell you, this is the beauty of Chris Arledge, that he can take a negative and turn it into a positive. It is absolutely
I'm a very silver
astounding with
lining
your
kind of
ability
guy.
to do that. And
Yeah.
let me just say this. I hope you all get a chance to read Chris's column that ran on Monday about his feelings about the whole Caleb situation and his unique perspective that we're all freaking out for no apparent reason. It was quite entertaining. So if you guys get a chance out there, those of you that are watching this video or listening to it on the podcast, you get a chance to read Musings with Arledge, I would highly encourage this particular one. You write very good columns, but this one actually I thought was exceptional. So
Well, thanks for the plug, Greg. I appreciate that.
Well, I expect the check will be in the mail by tomorrow.
And let me add to that. I was very impressed with your reference to Milton Friedman and to the free market economics. Obviously, free markets are great, but they always need to have some guardrails too over time, like antitrust laws and that kind of thing. And maybe we talk
you're
about
just a socialist. Don't start.
Yeah, there you go. Oh my
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get on
Oh.
Inside the Trojans Huddle. We try to touch all of the world's special needs.
Oh my God.
All right, before we get to the third quarter, I just want to remind everyone that you're watching or listening to WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle. This week's WeAreSC panelists include Eric McKennedy, Chris Arledge, Bruce Bagney, and I'm your host, Greg Katz. We encourage you to check out WeAreSC.com, part of the On3 network, and become a subscriber to the best coverage of USC football and USC athletics. Third quarter, gentlemen. We begin the second half kickoff and third quarter with this, and I think it's very timely. Based on what we see is happening at USC and across the college football landscape, is the NCAA transfer portal ruining college football? And if it is, what would you do to adjust the transfer rule if it is indeed doing this? Eric McKinney, what's your thoughts on the NCAA transfer portal?
I think it is taking college football through some growing pains right now. I'm going to stop way short of saying it's ruining college football. I'll tell you what, every day you get dozens of players jumping in the transfer portal. You get a ton of notices about coaches that are leaving too. This coach who just took a spot at this school is now going to a different school. I mean, coaches are spending a week and a half at schools and then jumping. This is not how could the players do this to ruin college football? I mean, this is something where avenues have been created for them to do this, and they're taking advantage of it. I just can't imagine a situation where you can tell a kid who feels like, hey, I've got a coach who is out to get me and will not play me no matter what I do. Oh, you can't go anywhere, or we're going to make it very difficult for you to find a spot somewhere else. I think it's just kind of, it's going to be what happens. I think eventually as it plays out, you're going to see sort of that roller coaster of, years where a ton of guys go in and years where maybe not so many. I do expect a lot of change every year. If you want to talk about college football has been always rooting for laundry, that's what you're getting. You're going to get times where you've got 18 new starters year to year, 22 new starters year to year. I mean, there's going to be a lot of transitions. I just don't know at this point, again, how you go back and you tell players, no, you can't move now. The 1 year deal where you can move and be eligible immediately. And that's outside of, obviously, if you're a grad transfer, which that had been put into place years and years ago. That seems fair. You're going to get a lot of guys who move, and then it's going to be a much tougher decision to move that second time. And so that's kind of what it looks like. At this point, quarterbacks are going to change. You got a situation where maybe the best quarterback in college football, left what seemed like a pretty good situation at a great program with a coach that a lot of people are fired up about coming in, talking about Caleb Williams coming in, talking about Jaxson Dart, maybe staying and trying to fight for a spot playing for Lincoln Riley, who all he's done is produce 2 number 1 overall picks and Heisman Trophy winners. And, Jaxson Dart feels like I should go take a look somewhere else. So no, I'm not going to say that it's ruining college football. It's making it different though. And like I said, it's going to be kind of everyone jumping to try to get what's best for them at this point. And it might take a while before things sort of settle out and everyone kind of realizes how to deal with this. I think after we get, 5, 6, 7, 10 years of data and more players see, hey, if I go into the portal, there's an 80% chance that I end up at a lower level or outside of a Power 5 program or something like that. Maybe we see decisions start to slow down or that kind of thing. But at the same time, I can't fault the kid who sees, hey, if I drop down to FCS or if I go to a group of 5 school from a Power 5, I can play there. And that's a better spot for me than trying to crack the 3 deep, at a big time program. I'm enjoying it though. For covering the sport and all that. And again, players trying to bet on themselves and find a different spot and make it a little bit easier for them to do that. I just can't get on board with college football is not the same and all this. Cause once you get on the field and you play this past season, it was fun again. I mean, it wasn't fun watching a 4-8 team and covering that, but in terms of the drama and the teams there at the end and the playoffs and all of that kind of the action, once that starts, kind of forget a little bit about the transfer portal.
All right. So Chris Arledge, you are the czar of college football with the ability to pass rules on your own. What would you do with the transfer portal? What would you change it? If you were to change it, what's your perspective on it?
Well, here's the thing. There isn't going to be a czar of college football because the NCAA is dead. right? I mean, not only did the NCAA lose the name, image, likeness litigation, but the recent Supreme Court case, which was unanimous and pretty narrow, but then there was a concurrence that really let the NCAA and everybody else know where the law is going. The NCAA is an unlawful cartel, period. It's history. So at some point, I suspect, we can talk about this on another show. At some point, I suspect that college football players will be a part of a collective bargaining organization or multiple collective bargaining organizations, and there will be binding rules that will bring some order to this. But I'm not worried about it right now. And part of that is that I played my freshman year at Occidental College. And then I transferred after that first semester because I didn't like it there. I didn't feel comfortable there. The football was fine. I played a fair amount for a freshman, but I didn't want to be there anymore. And it wasn't entirely clear to me why somebody should have kept me there if I didn't like it. What's the point? I mean, we don't do that in almost any other walk of life. If I go take a job and after a year I don't like the job, I can leave if I want to. And why shouldn't I be able to? For so long, the NCAA has imposed these rules on college athletes in the name of amateurism. When the schools are making hundreds of millions, the coaches are making millions, the networks are making tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not amateur. It hasn't been in decades. And so this excuse for why we should control where kids go to schools never made much sense to me, and it doesn't make any sense now. Most of the guys who enter the portal are guys who aren't happy where they are. Maybe it's because they're not getting much playing time. Maybe it's because it's not a good cultural fit for them. I don't know. But either way, the fact that those kids now have an opportunity to leave and go somewhere else without being penalized strikes me as a good thing. So no, I don't think it's ruining college football. I think it's actually the direction college football should have been headed. And I also think it's going to settle down a little bit after, and Eric alluded to this a little bit, after players start to see how these things shake out a little bit. The transfer portal will no longer be seen as my ticket to stardom. And I think there are a lot of guys who probably see it that way. They're not playing where they are, but they think they're really underappreciated and they're fantastic. They put their name in the portal. And the new place isn't any better than the old place. I think people become more educated about the transfer portal. But the truth is, if a kid is playing somewhere that he doesn't enjoy, he's going to school somewhere that he doesn't enjoy, why shouldn't he be able to leave? Because college football fans don't like it? So what? It's his life. It's not my life. They should be able to go where they want to go. And so I think it's a good thing.
All right. Old school Bagney, how do you feel?
Well, I'm going to make a few comments, and at the risk of being called a socialist. So, Chris, listen to this carefully, and I'm sure you'll have a view on this. First of all, I don't really care about it that much. I think though, right now it's a little bit crazy. I do think, to Eric's point, it's kind of fun. It's exhilarating to see all these people moving around, musical chairs, as I've called it. But I do think there are some both practical and I would call sort of legal or compliance implications or ramifications. I think the practical implications are that, and we saw it this year in two different schools. Michigan State brought a whole bunch of new people on, and they just turned the whole program around for the positive. And Clemson lost, I think, 9 or 10 guys to the portal, and they were pretty bad. I think another sort of practical issue, which is not, I don't think it's negative, but and you and I talked about this the other day, Greg, and that is this: if you've got two quarterbacks who are both 5 stars, they're not both signed at the same school. Usually they won't. And if one does, if they both do, one of them's going to leave, go in the portal and leave. What we might end up with is these 5-star quarterbacks and walk-on backups, like the kid at Georgia who ended up doing pretty darn well. I think the sort of the legal compliance issues, when you take the portal and combine it with name, image, and likeness, I think there are possibilities, prospects for abuse. I wonder, you got a boosters out trying to, quote, recruit, end quote, players to transfer to their schools, enticing them with NIL opportunities. And now I know that's not kosher, but that could happen. And also I'm concerned about the coaches here. I really absolutely do not understand what the role of coaches is in all this NIL thing. I read somewhere, I think on the site earlier, that Lincoln Riley was having a meeting today at 3:00 with a bunch of boosters. Is that to talk about NIL? I don't know, but I'm just a little bit concerned. And it's, I can tell you guys, I mentioned this before, I mentioned it twice. I live in SEC country. I know of stories that from credible sources of some of the most outrageous cheating you could ever imagine at places like Mississippi, Auburn, Alabama, etc. And I'm just wondering if we're going to see that kind of accelerated here. That's my point. Chris?
Greg,
So
let me jump in. Yeah.
Am I a
Greg,
socialist?
let me
Am I a
finish.
socialist?
No.
So the school can have nothing to do with NIL. That can't come from USC. That can't come from the school at all, coaches or anything like that. Now, the
At
school
least
can
legally,
sort of,
right? Legally.
yes, sure. So the school can kind of publicize, hey, this guy, got a deal with whatever, but that has to be set up outside of the school, and NIL also can't, for the most part. Some schools have kind of come up with licensing agreements, but for the most part, and for USC specifically too, is one of the schools where if, let's say, the quarterback or running back or whatever is going to go out and do an NIL deal, they can't sort of be affiliated with USC in it, logo or the interlocking SC, any of the trademarks, anything like that. So that's all things that a USC player, student athlete, needs to go out and get on their own. Now we're seeing a lot of student athletes sign kind of NIL representation, basically like having agents, and then they can go out and do all that stuff. For me, it puts it on the table. I mean, this is not, it's not new. None of this is new. Now you just have a way where you don't have to send it to the guy's uncles, friends, whoever, and then hope that it gets to the kid and it's, everyone's kind of got their hands in it throughout the whole thing. So that for me is kind of what this does, where if a player is going to get, $5 million, which again, we have not seen a lot of those. There was a lot of kind of outrage initially that, oh, this guy's going to go be the spokesperson for Gatorade, and then the locker room's going to get mad because this one guy's making $40 million a year in NIL. That has not happened for college football, for anything. So it is one of those things where student athletes can go make money on their own. Again, talking about boosters, paying players and all that kind of stuff, that has been sort of that, known thing going on for years and years and decades. And then it does become something where if a player wants to say, hey, I'm going to make more money through NIL doing this kind of stuff, and they, the football falls away, which again was another kind of thing that a lot of people threw out as a possibility, then that happens. People change careers. People find out that they can, do something else better than what they thought their kind of life plan would be. So again, the attempt here is to put this on the table. Like Chris said, if the NCAA is not involved and there is no governing body kind of saying you can do this and you can't do that, you're getting a lot of what we are seeing, where it's kind of a free-for-all, and schools, there's a massive amount of gray area right now where schools and boosters are able to operate in to be able to do this. Again, at the end of the day, if a 4th 5-star player is going to Texas A&M because they've got something set up, or if Alabama, oh my God, Alabama's putting together a great roster, like we haven't seen that before. mean, that's kind of one of those things where the schools that are good at football are going to get good football players because the fans who have always been there can now be more involved in making sure that those players get there. So it might make it tough for kind of an upstart program to figure it out there. But then you talk about the transfer portal being in there. If you can go pull, a second team guy from Alabama or Georgia or whatever, and kind of get them all together at Louisville or at a school like that, you could turn your roster around pretty quickly there and compete. So it's, like I said, kind of growing pains on that as everyone sort of figures out these two absolutely monumental changes that are happening right at the same time. I think that's what's causing so much chaos. And then again, like Chris alluded to, there's nobody in charge of the store right now. And so people are kind of figuring it out on their own. And surprise, surprise, the best football programs in the country are doing the best in both of those aspects.
Chris, did you want to add something there?
No, I think Eric said a lot of what I was going to say. The reality is that there are the same number of good college football players now as there were 5 years ago, right? This doesn't artificially increase the number of good players. Those players already had a market value far in excess of what the NCAA allowed them to be compensated at, right? You can imagine when Reggie Bush was at USC, what was his market value? It was way above a small stipend and a place to live and tuition, which he probably didn't even take advantage of. So that means that and whenever you have a situation where you have these artificial, what amounts to artificial price constraints, you're going to have a black market created. So why is it that it was a good thing when schools who had boosters who were willing to pay a lot of money and who are willing to do things that other programs were not willing to do would get an unfair advantage? And now that it's just out in the open and transparent, it's suddenly a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Now everybody can partake, and they can partake in something that's not dirty anyway. It's simply people getting whatever their market value is, which works for everybody else, everywhere else in America. Why not for these 18 to 22-year-old kids who have a relatively short time span that they can capitalize on their skill set, their notoriety, and are doing something that is punishing and potentially hazardous to their health anyway? It's absolutely a good thing. I'm in favor of it. I'd be in favor of somebody sending me some NIL money too. It hasn't happened, but if we have viewers out there who are interested in that, I mean, you were promoting my column. Maybe somebody wants to do that for me, and I'm okay with it. I don't feel bad.
I do not find that shocking. I would like to add for our viewers here just a little side note, and I'll be very quickly in what I'm going to say about the transfer portal. But Bruce Bagney is a former federal prosecutor, so if he comes out with some really logical step-by-step, like he's prosecuting something, that's where he's getting it from. And Chris Arledge is a well-respected lawyer himself, based in Dallas, USC law degree. So these guys have all these critical thinking skills, and we appreciate their points of view. Eric, we're going to have to get you somehow get your jurisprudence so that you can match wits with these two people that I feel like I'm a jurist sitting here listening to it, but it's wonderful. But let me just wrap it up the quarter here by saying, like anything else, good things that are meant to be good, we always find a way to circumvent the law or to, take cell phones. Look how good cell phones were when they came out and all the positive things. And then we started having people texting while they're driving or, zapping information for other people's cell phones. And, it kind of goes with the territory. I think the same thing is going to happen with the NCAA transfer portal. Once the should we say, the fire storm goes through, they'll figure out some guardrails to deal with it. I do think one thing that the transfer portal has done, and I will debate this with anybody, it's made players focus on their individual choices, which is fine. But what it's doing is, I think it's creating even more of a sense that if I'm going to get to the league, AKA NFL, I need to be able to showcase what I'm doing. And so therefore, it's maybe not so much win one for Old SC. It's how about you're not showcasing my skills, Lincoln. I need to go someplace where I can exhibit what I can do and put some things on film so that the NFL will take a look at me. So to me, this has all been happening. I think it's not a surprise to me, but I'm so into team, but I do respect an individual's right to move. Now, I think one of the things with the NCAA, of course, was originally you couldn't transfer unless there was you had to stay out a year, and God forbid if you transferred within a conference, what that was going to do. I will just use this as an example, and then I'm moving on here. I was really surprised this last weekend when I saw that Travis Dye of Oregon says, I'm not going to the NFL, but I am going into the portal. This is a guy who led the Pac-12, I believe, in rushing. He's a tremendous back. He's out of Norco, was a 3-star player when he came out. And I hear, maybe it's not true, it's just another one of the famous transfer portal rumors that SC is very strong looking at him and that he wants to come to USC. And personally, if you said, would you take him as a portal transfer? In a heartbeat. I think he's that good. I think he's that tough. I think he'd fit in Lincoln Riley's system. So a lot to talk about the portal. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the future, which takes us, of course, to the fourth quarter. And of course, as the fourth quarter we have, I must again light the traditional, well, let's see, can I do it? Yes, the traditional torch.
We've only had it for 3 weeks, Greg. How traditional can it be?
Well, you make a good point. But what do they say in the courtroom? Not sustained, position overruled. Is that what they say?
Objection overruled.
Objection overruled. Thank you, Professor Bagney, who, by the way, did teach at that great LSU law school. So
Yes, I did.
yes, you did.
The only thing good about Louisiana was the food. A lot of nice folks, good food. And you want to talk about crazy football fans? They're insane. You're not safe at a night game at LSU.
All right, so let's move into the fourth quarter here. Within hours after Georgia defeated Alabama for the college football playoff national championship, those way too early 2022 national preseason rankings were released, and the Trojans were ranked number 5 on On3, number 14 by CBS.com Sports, and number 22 by ESPN.com. Now, considering the Trojans were 4-8 last season and have a new head coach, do you agree or disagree with one or more or any of these preseason rankings? Chris, what do you think?
Number 5?
That's what it said.
Look,
aren't you pleased with that?
What's that?
Aren't you pleased with that? Aren't you excited with that prospect that they're number 5?
I mean, I've always closely watched the On3 poll, and so it's good to be noticed. But look, the truth is that last year was an anomaly. It took a lot of crazy things for USC to go 4-8. A number of years of horrible coaching, of course, but a coach getting fired early in the season, a coach being promoted who wasn't ready to be a head coach, a bunch of assistants who clearly weren't interested in being there anymore. Last year, USC went 4-8, but they weren't really a 4-8 team. That was a 7-5 kind of team. It was a 6-6 kind of team. With better coaching and plugging a few holes, I could easily see USC winning 9 or even 10 games next year. Wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. So what does that mean? If you win 9 or 10 games, that means you're somewhere between 10 and 15 in the country, maybe creeping into the top 10. That wouldn't shock me. I mean, let's not forget, guys. While it will take some time for Lincoln Riley to implement his program, USC may have been the worst coach team in the Pac-12 the last 3-4 years. I mean, horrific, absolutely horrific. So does it surprise me that when you hire a competent coach that people assume that you're going to get dramatically better? Does not surprise me. I think USC will get dramatically better. If they want to finish in the top 10, though, they're going to have to land some front 7 talent on defense, because because they're not close to a top 10 team with the current defensive roster. But we'll see what happens.
All right, well, let me ask you something, Bruce Bagney.
Yes.
Number 5, number 14, number 22. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you know what? I think, first of all, I think the five ranking by our partner on 3 really indicates how awful the coaching was and how outstanding they believe it will be. And I mean, we're going from one extreme to the other here. Now, I think there's some issues with Riley. We've talked about it. I'm with Chris 100% on the defense, especially the front 7. But we have a lot of good players too. Like this Callan Bullock kid was just named first team freshman All-America. He's a hell of a good football player. And so I don't want to, even though there's going to be a big change in the roster, we've got a lot of fine players on the roster. I can think of, we can go down the list. But I really think that we've got a chance, assuming that, as Chris said, if we can shore up the defense, I think we've got a chance to finish in the top 10.
All right, well, there's a vote there. Eric, publisher of We Are SC, editor-in-chief, are you that much of a homer that you're going to say number 5?
I'm a terrible homer, Greg. I'm a terrible homer.
Of course, and that's why you get paid the salary you do.
Yeah, I'm making a big start, but listen, you guys have journalistic integrity, okay?
I don't know if I'd go that far, but we have some sort of integrity.
What does that say about me?
Eric, what do you think?
Greg, I got to say, you were really biasing the jury by asking the question the way you did. Agreeing with something automatically makes you a homer with it. No. When I saw that we put out on 3 put out USC as number 5, that is, I think, taking a lot of guesses at how this offseason is going to play out. If Caleb Williams shows up, if USC lands 2 more defensive line transfers, 2 or 3 linebacker check, the numbers are sort of out there for USC to potentially put that together. Even when you look at the transfer portal, it's not something where it's like, well, you have to pick this guy and this guy and this guy. That transfer portal is kind of evergreen, and there are guys going in every single day. I mean, you at USC may end up with a guy that doesn't go into the transfer portal for another 2 months. That's sort of the way that works. So again, guessing on where they should be ranked preseason based on what the roster looks like right now, that's not the sense that I got from any of these. Now, that being said, 22, sure, that's fine. Stick them kind of at the end of the top 25 right now, assuming there's a bounce from Lincoln Riley and he does figure out kind of getting some guys in and figuring out that roster. Again, 5, yeah, feels pretty high, extremely high from a team coming off 4-8. But also, it's USC, it's Lincoln Riley. It's that kind of, buzz that you feel like can be generated. And also it's the Pac-12. I mean, if you are talking about a team that just has to kind of cobble wins together, the conference that you want to be in right now is the Pac-12. So like Chris said, if you're looking at kind of win numbers and not how good is the team and that sort of thing, because again, USC doesn't have to play somebody else's schedule. They only have to play USC's schedule next year. And if you win as a Power 5 program and a program that has the football history of USC, you're going to go get up there in those rankings. Again, preseason, no matter how things shake out, I don't see them in the top 10 preseason based on last year and based on probably questions that will still exist with the roster by the time fall camp comes. But yeah, in the top 25, USC and Lincoln Riley and whatever else happens, I'd absolutely bet that they end up in the preseason top 25.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up by saying this. USC was 4-8 last year because they were 4-8. As a former coach, you are what the scoreboard in your record says. I don't buy into we were this or we should have been that or we could have been that. if you would have been that or should have been that, you would have been that. So I take 4-8, even with bad coaching, it's still 4-8. I think on 3, it was a beautiful thing. It was an eye opener. I don't think they're anywhere close to being a number 5 team in the country at the moment. I think one of the things we have to also point out is we don't know what's going to happen after spring practices of all the schools. Who's going to say after spring practice, okay, I'm not starting, I'm out of here. So I don't think we'll even know what SC is going to be about talent-wise until the first day of training camp. That's just my perspective on it. I think that, the middle, the 10 to 20, I think is, I think it's a reach a little bit. I don't see him there either. Where, ESPN has them at number 22. I thought that was kind of nice. I thought it was, out of respect for USC, out of respect for Lincoln Riley. Are they going to be higher than 22? I'd be disappointed if they weren't, but they're certainly not. I don't know if I would say they're 22 today, but maybe, when I'm, assured that, let's say that Caleb Williams is going to be a Trojan, when I see that official thing, I'll get a little bit more optimistic. I'm optimistic about the program going up, but these preseason rankings show you that one service says 5, another one says 22. It shows you that really, you just take it with a grain of salt, and that's all it's worth to me at this point in time. So here we go. I think this is a good lead in to our overtime question. The college playoff title game will be held next season. For those of you who don't know, at SoFi Stadium in nearby Inglewood, which is just outside of Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles area. So watching Monday night's national championship game between Georgia and Alabama, how far is USC, or the Pac-12 for that matter, from contending from a national title? Bruce Bagney, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to go back to a point that we've been making from the beginning here. And this is something that Chris has been stressing as a former defensive player, is the difference in the quality and just the size of the Alabama and Georgia defenders was the difference between them and SC is just startling. We used to be that way, but we've fallen off. I do believe, though, that I think it's a possibility, especially if they expand the number of playoff teams. If, let's say, we go to 8, I wouldn't be surprised if not this year, but in 23, if we don't make the playoffs. I'll be surprised, especially with this kid, Caleb Williams, and with the other talent. We're going to have the number 1 recruiting class in the country next year, I hope, or we could. We're going to start getting all these great players out of Southern California and get the big horses from elsewhere. So I'm very optimistic about it.
Eric, you optimistic about it? Where is SC today? How long is it going to take? And what about the Pac-12? A lot of questions.
They're farther away than the distance from the Coliseum to SoFi Stadium. It is a much farther ways to go for that, for USC and for the Pac-12. That the conference right now cannot compete up front on either side of the ball with what we saw from Georgia and what we really saw all year from Alabama. Even the way kind of Michigan ran the ball and played defense this year. But that being said, when you talk about kind of competing, it does go into what does the playoff look like? Does it get to 8? Does it get to 12? If it gets to a point where you're guaranteed a spot in the playoffs if you win your conference, which is, again, one of the different iterations of the playoffs being discussed, then yeah, USC could win the Pac-12 within the next couple of years. And again, talking about when that playoff expansion potentially happens, if that's sooner, if that's farther down the line. But that could be it. Right now, though, USC needs a massive overhaul, just in terms of size, speed, athleticism, all of that. Up front defensively with what we've seen a little bit in the past, and then the offensive line as well. There were huge steps forward in the offensive line this past year, but you're still not talking about multiple first round picks along the line of scrimmage on either side for USC. So it's a gap. There's a gap between, you're talking about Oregon as one of the best teams, Utah as one of the best teams. Utah, went with Ohio State in that Rose Bowl game, but kind of dangerous to say that that's the best that Ohio State had to offer this year with the number of guys that had opted out of that game, and kind of the bowl games in general are a tough thing to take, as a team's A game right now if it's not in the playoffs. So a long way to go, but that transfer portal, it gives you kind of that shortcut that you can take if you collect sort of the right group of players out there. Michigan State, I think got mentioned earlier, and that's a program where Mel Tucker seems to have kind of his finger on how to utilize NIL and the transfer portal to get good pretty quickly and kind of keep yourself there. So I think USC has done the right things this offseason, the right coaching hire, the right sort of attitude towards all of this, letting Lincoln Riley kind of operate the way he wants to operate, the recruiting budget and people coming in there and what they're doing now. They've sent the bulldozer out in front of this path now that USC had to take to get to the playoff. And so it's being cleared a little bit. You can see some of that light, but at this point, no, that the roster that USC has right now, it is not comparable to a Georgia roster, an Alabama roster, those big time rosters right now. Lincoln Riley believes it can get there. And at this point, you kind of have to believe Lincoln Riley based on what he was able to do at Oklahoma. So we'll see how it goes. I do expect a lot more players coming in through the transfer portal and probably some big time guys this offseason. And certainly we talked about the 2023 recruiting class plus the transfer portal. It'll get much better faster at USC than at other programs. But again, I'm just kind of talking around this idea that no, USC is not winning next year's national championship. That would be a massive overhaul and a tough task.
Chris Arledge, let me ask you, put on your Gridiron GPS system. How long is it going to, as my kids used to say, are we there yet? How long is it going to take before we're there yet?
Look, we don't know if we'll ever get there, right? I mean, I think Lincoln Riley is a tremendous hire, and I think he's going to recruit very well. But there's a difference between turning USC around so it's once again a top program where it's winning the Pac-12, 50, 75% of the time. There's still a long gap from that to winning a national title. And, Michigan was a really good football team this year. They were. And Michigan was not in the same class as Georgia. They didn't belong on the same field. There were two teams that separated themselves above everybody. And, Alabama sleptwalked through a lot of the regular season. They had some close games. But the reality is that Alabama and Georgia have front seven talent defensively. And they're great. They're great in a lot of places. But that front seven talent defensively is such that they have 6-7 players as good as anybody USC has. I think Thule's a really good football player. I think he would probably be in the rotation at those two schools. He would not be a standout, and there would be 6 other guys just as good. So USC has a long way to go. The Pac-12 has a long way to go. The best Pac-12 team lost to the second best Big Ten team and had 4 losses this year. The second best Pac-12 team got blown out 3 times. The Pac-12 is a mess, and I think Lincoln Riley knows that. I think he realizes that if you dominate West Coast recruiting and you start to stack up the talent, that there's really nobody in his way here to be a playoff contender every single year. So I think USC will get there, and I think USC gets there relatively quickly. Within the next couple of years, I think USC is a consistent contender for the playoffs. But whether it can take that next step or not, I don't know. Not many programs do. Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State has, although weren't at that level this year. Clemson did, although they weren't at that level this year. But other than those teams, who else has made it that high recently? So, can USC do it? Maybe. But I know this. What we're going to see is a much better football team, a much more exciting football team. a team that'll be fun to go out and watch. And if that means that USC goes 9-2 and wins the Pac-12 and can't compete with Alabama, will I be disappointed? Yes. But is that easier to tolerate than what we've seen the last 4 or 5 years? Yeah. And so we're now at the opposite of the Pete Carroll years, where we were so spoiled that winning the Rose Bowl was a disappointment. We were bored with it. Now we've been through such pain and agony over the last 4 or 5 years. Making it to the Rose Bowl would be freaking incredible. Good times are back. National title, I don't know.
Well, I will say this, until they get the type of defensive front seven that you see, maybe they can't do it. I don't know. But until they do get the type of talent that Georgia and Alabama is, because that's really who you're going against if you have national title hopes. And you could throw in Ohio State there as well on occasion. But until they accumulate this type of talent, and not just on the defensive line side, I think that is the priority, but also to cement a foundation offensively along the line. SC is going to have no problem with skill players with Lincoln Riley. They'll get anybody that they want if they aren't already starting to do so. But in order to make that big change, and I think that Chris, you pointed it out, and Eric pointed it out nicely, until they get, I hate to use this term because I hate using it, but I'm going to use it anyway, Keith Jackson's big uglies up front. It's only a matter of time. I do remember, not to sound like the oldie that I am, I remember that SC had a great team in 1968 with O.J. Simpson and some others that were outstanding. But I remember they went up against Ohio State, and I happened to see Ohio State actually practice at East LA Community College, and I was just blown away how different they looked compared to USC. Ohio State had 2 offensive linemen, Dave Foley and Rufus Mays, that both played in the NFL. Jim Stillwagon, linebacker. I mean, they were just Jack Tatum. It was just like, holy mackerel. And they beat SC. They beat them down in the second half. And you just kind of said, if SC is going to be able to play at that level against an Ohio State team like that, and this was before the great integration of Southern football, SC is going to have to get linemen that can match that, because it was just like, I hate to say it, a miniature version of what we see sometimes today. So hopefully the Trojans will recruit wise. They will get what they need as far as the best they can get from the transfer portal. But it's going to get down to getting these linemen. If they don't do it, they can win the Pac-12. I assume the expansion will hopefully come in my lifetime. So until they do, I don't know whether they can go as far as we all want them to go. But they have the opportunity to do so. So that will be exciting to watch them do that as things unfold. So guys, that wraps it up for today's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. Big thank you this week to Bruce Bagney, Chris Arledge, and Eric McKinney, our panelists, and a bigger thank you to all of you that have been watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. So again, until next Tuesday, we say to all of you, fight on, everybody.